Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great honor to be here. What I would like to do today is a sort of introduction to a book which I'm finishing now with my co-author and friend Michael Richter, which is called Economics with No Prices and No Gains. Let me first of all introduce my co-author, Michael Richter, and here is a picture of him, or to be more precise, of the lab, and our lab is of course a cafe. Some of you know my obsession with cafes, so that's another proof. That's a cafe, in this case in London, where some of the ideas of at least one of the papers in this, which was the base for the book, were developed. Well, you don't see Michael Richter, so I should point him out. That's the guy. He was in London at the time, now he's in New York in Baruch College. Before, let me just say that I'm particularly pleased to give a lecture in Maastricht University because of the following. So here is the cafe obsession, but now look at that. So that's near my home in Tel Aviv. There is a cafe which is called Cafe Maastricht. It's on the Maastricht Square in Tel Aviv, and the picture of the person is on the... How could you miss him? And usually I'm sitting here. Sometimes at least. Okay, so a little bit about the book. The title is a bit provocative, and it's supposed to be so. And the main idea of this book is we are used to have economics models, models of economic theory of basically two types. One of them is the competitive equilibrium, general equilibrium, competitive equilibrium. And the second, which became very, very popular in the last 40 years or so, is of game theory. Now, most of my academic research was around game theory, but actually in my heart, I'm not game theorist. I'm more sort of economic theorist. And in some sense, what we want to do in this book is to say, you know, these days when young people start to write a model, they go to game theory. When I was young, then immediately people, when they wanted to model something, went to competitive equilibrium or to general equilibrium. What we would like to say, stop a second. Don't do it automatically. There could be also models which, to my opinion, could be even at least not less interesting than game theory or general equilibrium, which are not classified within these two streams. And we would like to make some suggestions how to go in this direction. And I will list them, the main ideas here, but I'm not sure that I will have the time to go through all of them. So let's go and just remember that this is the main idea of this presentation, or this book. The presentation is just to throw to you some ideas about the book, and the book is about some attempts to create models of economic theory which are not classified automatically into competitive equilibrium, neither to competitive equilibrium nor into game theory. This does not mean that these, of course, are not right models. I don't believe in general about the concept of a right model. For me, a model is just a story, a fable. Some of you probably have seen a book which I wrote several years ago, which is called Economic Fables, and the whole idea was to say this is not models like in the sciences, these are models which are just like stories. And I treat whatever, at least I did in my life in economic theory, just as a bunch of stories, unfortunately not interesting as some of the big writers or the small writers, but unfortunately they are formal and very few people look at them, but these are just stories. That's at least my approach. Okay, I know that the audience is not uniform in the background. I'm economic theoretician, so I use formal models, but don't be alarmed if you are not used to those models. I will explain everything in words, almost everything in words, and if you don't follow the symbols, it's very fine. So we need some sort of a platform on which to present whatever the ideas we have. And the platform is what is called a model which we call an economy. Let me very, very clearly explain what do I mean by that. Economy is a model which is, first of all, like in markets or in game theory, it's first of all, there is a bunch of individuals, agents, N agents, which is the set of agents that operates in the societies that we talk about. Now, each of the agents has to choose an element from a set X. The set X is the grand set that they must choose something from this set. Now, notice this set is individualistic actions. This is not social choice. They have to choose one action. Each of them has to choose one action from the set X. Each of them has preferences over the elements in X, over the elements that they choose. And in this respect, immediately, by saying that the preferences are only on the set X, we depart from game theory, because in game theory, the main idea is that I care about what I choose, what I act, but this depends very crucially in interesting games on what other players play. But that's not the case here. In this respect, it's like in general equilibrium, where I consume a bundle. I don't care what are the bundles that other people consume. Now, a profile is what we want to explain. This is an assignment of each action, one action to each of the individuals. So x1, xn is a profile. That's an outcome. It's a possible outcome of the situation. But now comes the key point that makes this an economy. There is some constraint, and the constraint is that not all profiles are feasible. Not all profiles are feasible. A lot of examples will come in a second. Now, why this is economics? This is economics because the basic structure, the basic properties of economics, sometimes that's the way that we define economics, is the study of situations, human situations, where there are two things that operates. Number one, people have some preference, some interest about what they do or choose. And second, there is some constraint, and the constraint is social. Namely, I want everything, you want everything, but it's impossible that both of us will get everything. So in this respect, the feasibility, you will see the examples in a moment, as I've said, but this is the components, the existence of physical constraint, objective constraint, external constraint, that is modeled already in this situation about the configurations of what people can together do. That's what makes it economics. But this formalization, as you will see, allows us also to cover situations which traditionally are not part of economic theory. Examples. So the first example is probably the most economic example that we can think about. Those of you who come from economics think about something like Edgeworth's box or something like that, exchange economics. Namely, there are K commodities, and the action is a bundle, namely how much I eat from good 1, good 2, good 3, and so on. And the constraint is that there is some, it's like in this buffet, the buffet, the E is a description of the grand bundle that exists here, and everybody can take something from the buffet, some configuration, some vector of quantities of goods. And the constraint is that the sum of what we take cannot be more than the bundle E, or in this case, I wrote it equal to E, but it can be less equal E. Namely, we cannot eat more than what exists on the buffet. That's the most traditional economic situation that I can think about. This is much less, we call it the give and take economy. This is economy, think about it quite abstractly, a situation where some of us can give, we can either give or take. I can either contribute to society or I can utilize the society. I can give money to the fund, I can take money from the fund. So positive is that I take, negative is that I give. I give something, minus 0.5 means I give 0.5 for myself. The constraint is that the sum of what we do has to be equal to 0. Namely, you cannot take more, or even somehow whatever is given has to be taken. Again, it may be equal to 0 or less equal to 0. That's the give and take economy. It's not traditionally economics. It's not traditional economics, but you will agree with me that that's a very classic, it should be a classical situation of economics. that's an example which is far from the traditional economics. This is a very old map of my beloved country. And here the constraint is that everybody has to settle somewhere. And I prefer to be on the mountains, and some other people prefer the beach or the valley or the whatever. The constraint here is that the distance between any two agents cannot be larger than d. Why? Because there are some enemies around, and they're going to jump on us. And in case that they will jump on us, we have to be close enough so that if the enemy will come, we'll be close enough to defend the defender. So something like that is possible if the distance between the two points on which are the farthest one from another is not equal to d. So it may be that I want to be on the mountains, but still I will be in Haifa because of the problem of this problem. Okay, that clear? So that's very much not classical economic situation. But the constraint is that the existence of our society depends on the fact that we live close enough. If not, then there is some crisis. The crisis may be that we will be eliminated by the enemy. The crisis may be that there will be some unrest internally or whatever because of the lack of. Think about it also as a political situation, as a party. You have to choose a position. If the distance between some elements in the party are too far, what happens to the party? It split, or it collapses, or it loses the elections, or whatever. So that's the constraint that we have here in mind. Last example, it's called the roommate economy. Those of you who come probably from computer sciences probably know it from there. It's a classical problem there, which is the following. You see here there is a party of 8 guys. There are 8 students. And they are that's the first night that they spend together, or the first lunch. And in a few moments, they will have to split into rooms. There are 4 rooms. So each 2 of them has to live together. And now the question, how will they split among the 4 in the 4 rooms? All the 4 rooms are completely symmetric, so they don't care about what room they will sleep in, but they do care very much about their neighbor. Roommate. And that's a very old and very well-known problem which is connected with Shapley-Shubik, the assignment problem and matching problems. But that's a variant which is quite interesting and has many properties, interesting properties. But in any case, why it is within our structure? Because, again, there is n elements. Each of us has to choose a partner. Choosing myself should be the worst. So I have to choose somebody who is not me. And so I have a preference about my roommate. And what is the constraint? The constraint is I choose you, you should choose me. That's the constraint about the feasibility of the partition into the 4 rooms. Okay? Again, it's not a classical problem in economics, although economists were studying it because of some reasons. Okay, so that's examples to economists. But any questions about what is economy? Please ask me, because I don't rush anywhere, so I prefer just to throw the ideas and then to cover most. Okay. So going back to the classical story, or at least of not of games, but of markets. So what is the picture that usually we have when we think about a market? We think about there is a bunch of guys, and they have some in their heads, they have somewhere there, they have some sort of a preference relation about their consumption. And there is some constraint F about what they can choose. Each of them has some budget set. And each of them choose optimally given, or not optimally, but in any case, let's say optimally given the budget set that he has. Now, what brings order, what brings harmony in such a society, in such an environment? What brings harmony are, I don't know if you see it, I hope that you see, it's prices. So the prices prices move and move and move until they are settled. They are settled in a way that the prices affect or determine the budget sets. And in a way, why they are settled? Because in the moment that they are settled, the optimal actions or optimal choices of the individuals from the budget sets are such that they are compatible. Compatible, for example, that the sum of them is exactly what is the endowment of the society, or whatever we produce, we consume, or whatever. That's the picture. Now, who determines the prices? So traditionally, we think about this guy. That's the invisible hand, which is a code in economics to say no idea. So somehow it's determined by some apparatuses that we don't model within this picture. That's the classical picture. The picture that we would like, Michael and me, would like to persuade you that there is a point, at least, to look at, is that we are going to do one thing in this picture, but it will be a key, which is to replace the prices with something else. So there will be something else here, and each of the chapters of the book, there is something else, or something different, and this something else, you will see now, what are at least one or two of the something else that we have in mind that will determine again, who will determine the something else? The semi-invisible, and namely, no idea. Sometimes in the book, we have some ideas about some dynamic processes that lead to it, but I don't like this part, to be honest, and just think about it as not modeled. Okay. By the way, a personal note, I should take full credit on this picture. It's not Michael, it's me. But now, look at that. You see, that's a picture that a big artist, a great artist, was drawn in 1957. Do you know who is the guy? It's not Picasso. It's me. So, and now look at that. You see this guy and this guy? 62 years, nothing changed. And I discovered it recently, and I loved it. It's, okay, sorry for the self-promotion. Okay. So let me go through the first something else, and this again, a picture from London. It's the same cafe where you saw again, which I love this cafe, Cafe Otto in East London, where, as I said, some of the ideas of this paper were developed there. I don't like, let me start with to put you into the mood of the first something else. Relax and think about the last time. I'm sure that now you think about the next Christmas dinner. Think about your last dinner, Christmas or whatever dinner, family dinner. And here is one of them. And here there are 18 guys sitting around the table. And now there's something dramatic is going to happen. The first, in the first stage of the family dinner, grandma or grandfather come and put on the table. If it was in Israel, I would say half a chicken or something like that. I don't know what is traditional food here. And then you have to eat it, right? There is no question. The dictator put it on the table, on your plate, and you have to eat it. Full stop. There is no economic problem here. You have to eat what you were told to eat. But now comes the moment. The grandma comes and with the traditional pie, and she puts it on the table, and she disappears. Okay? And now she knows that here are again theoreticians and economists in the family. They can do whatever they want. There is a pie. People think about it that nobody is here on the diet. Everybody wants a large portion of the pie, at least more than 1 divided by 18. And she disappears. Now, you see, that's economic situation. There is our preferences, and there is a constraint. There is only one pie. And so it's exactly the definition of what is economic situation. And now, okay, so there is economy, there are some, let's say, traditional general equilibrium guys around the table, so they probably propose to have a market. So everybody will get a portion of the pie, and then they will trade. I like the pie more than you, and we will trade 1 divided by 22 of the pie for such and such. I hope that in your family there is no market in this stage. The game theoretician, the auction guy especially, will probably suggest to have an auction. Actually, they will suggest that the grandma will come back to the scene and will conduct an auction, and the auction will be a mechanism to determine who will get how much of the pie. Again, I hope very much that your family, grandma, or whoever, does not conduct an auction when you have this family dinner. Now, but something happens, right? Something happens. There is somehow people, I'm sure that some of these dinners end with catastrophe. But normally, if there is a catastrophe this year, I think that next year it will be somehow repaired. There are some traditions that somehow determine how the pie will be divided among the family dinners. And let us suggest the following. The following is that there is some convention, or a norm, if you like, that determines how much you are allowed to take. The convention might be, for example, it does not exclude the possibility that you will eat zero, because it may be also that something that I don't model it here, that you don't want to insult grandma. But forget of that. Then given that the only guys here in the story are the 18 guys, young guys around the table, then the convention will determine what is the amounts of the pie that you're allowed to take. In particular, what is the maximum amount of the pie that you're allowed to take. The convention, let's say the convention was that you're allowed to take 10% of the pie. Because in the past, actually, the family was smaller, and so 10% was fine. If this is the case, what will happen is that 10 people will grab 10% of the pie, the other 8 will be left with nothing, and that's not good. That's a collapse. That's a crisis, at least for this year. And unless something will be repaired next year, it's not a good idea for the family to meet again. So probably there are some forces that will correct the tradition. So instead of 8%, now there is a shock, and people don't take more than 4% of the pie. Now 4%, so times 18, so there is some left over. That's not terrible, that's feasible, yeah, because 72 is less than 100. But people probably realize that 4% is a too strict norm, and there is possibility to relax a little bit the constraint. That's our basic idea. The basic idea here is that situations like that can be resolved, not necessarily resolved, but can be resolved by determination of what is the partition of what is done and what is not done, what is permissible and what is forbidden. What is done and not, I prefer actually the done and not done. There are things in life that are not done. Maybe you already don't like this lecture and you want to leave, but it's not done, so you don't do it, right? There are things that are done and there are things that are not done in life, and these are, in this case, to take one. Now, what is the solution here? The solution here will be, the done will be that you are taking 1 divided by n. N is the number of participants on the dinner of the pie. Why this is equilibrium? Because given that you are allowed to take only up to 1 divided by n to the pie, and everybody likes the pie, then everybody will take 1 divided by n of the pie, and hallelujah. Why more than that is not equilibrium? Because then people will take more, and it's not compatible. Why it will be not less? It will not be less because of this power, extra power that we assume, which is that if constraints are not needed, then they are relaxed. And that's the philosophy that we have here. That if there are laws of society which are not needed, then eventually are relaxed. Think about some fences that are put in some places that actually nobody wants to cross. So eventually the fences will disappear. Go to some borders in Europe, you will find some fences like that. Okay, that's the basic idea of this particular something. So the something here is, to summarize, the something here is some determination what is done and what is not done. Okay. Okay. So let me go I'm a formal economist, so I will go through the formal definition. But again, don't be worried if you you don't like formalism. So what is equilibrium? Equilibrium, first of all, any definition of equilibrium relies, first of all, on the definition of what is a candidate for equilibrium. The candidate for equilibrium is what we call a configuration. What is a configuration? Configuration is a set Y, which is a subset of X. Interpretation, this is the permissible set. That's what is the done actions. The other actions, X minus Y, are not done. And a specification for each agent of what does it do. Those of you who are the economists here must be familiar with this structure in the sense that the Y usually in the competitive equilibrium is replaced by a vector of prices. Here there are no prices, the prices are replaced by the something else, which is a set of the done actions. Now, so that's a candidate, a configuration. These are the permissible, this is the permissible set, and these are the profile of actions that actually people choose. Now, what is a semi-equilibrium? A para-equilibrium, sorry. A para-equilibrium is a configuration such that each of the agents chooses the best from the set Y, and the configuration is feasible. Okay, so a para-equilibrium is things are fine. Fine in the sense that the actions that are chosen by the individuals are compatible. This is still not equilibrium. Equilibrium is also immune to the possibility that I don't need to have Y to be so restricted. Namely, if I expand Y, namely I relax the restrictions, the social restrictions, again, notice it's not the restrictions in F, it's the restrictions in what is done and not done. So if I allow more undone things to be done, then things are not fine in equilibrium. Namely, it's not equilibrium if I can relax the set Y, I increase the done, and still things are fine. So therefore, in equilibrium, this is, a para-equilibrium such that there is no set Z, which is strictly larger than Y, contains Y, strictly contains Y, such that things still, if people choose the best from Z, things are compatible. That's the definition of equilibrium, what we call here a Y equilibrium. Let me give you examples. By the way, what can be done with such models and such concepts? Of course, what can be done are two things. Number one is to prove general propositions. In the papers, in the book, we do it, but I will not do it here. And second is to look at examples. That's personally, I prefer to do that because the examples give you some sort of easy possibility to understand better the pluses and minuses of the model and the concept. Okay. So let's go through some. The first example or two will be examples just to make sure that we understand the concept. So that's what is called the housing economy. Housing economy is the economy where you have a set of houses, in this case A, B, C, D, E, and you have two individuals, and the individuals have preferences over the houses. So in this case, agent 1 prefer A, B, C, D, E, agent 2 prefer A, C, B, E, D. Now, what is the constraint? The constraint is that not two individuals should be in the same house. Okay? That's the constraint. Now, let's say that the permissible set is DE. Agent 1 chooses D, agent 2 chooses E. That's compatible. They choose different houses. Therefore, this is a para-equilibrium. This and this is a para-equilibrium. But this is not equilibrium because the constraint that you can settle only at D and E and ABC is forbidden is not needed. Because if you increase the set Y to B, C, D, E, still one chooses B, chooses C, and that's compatible. So this is also a para-equilibrium. But this is also a Y equilibrium. Why? Because you cannot further expand the set of permissible set. Because if you include now the set, the house A, the A is the palace on the mountain or near the beach or whatever, everybody likes it, and it's not possible that to arrange by this mechanism that only one of them will take the house. So therefore, this is, in this example, this is a Y equilibrium, and that's the only Y equilibrium. And here you see already the meaning of this solution. In order to prevent something that everybody likes, then you have actually to forbid it. You have to put a taboo on settling on the beach or on the peak of the mountain. By the way, that's also an example, trivial example, especially for economists, that the outcome of this equilibrium is not necessarily Pareto efficient. Because by our definitions, this is dominated by agent 1 taking A and agent 2 taking C. So this is not Pareto efficient. That's all. That's the only thing that can be said about that from this perspective. Look at this example. In this example, everybody has the same preferences. In this case, actually, there is no equilibrium. There is no equilibrium because if the two of us have the same preferences, then whatever is the set that of permissible set, we will make the same choice. So this is an example. Actually, that's a very typical example, and this is actually also an example that can show you what are the circumstances that the Y equilibrium will not exist. This is an example of an economy where the mechanism behind the Y equilibrium, namely that people just have some done and undone actions, does not work. There is no claim that this works always, like there is no claim that competitive equilibrium always works. Okay. Any questions? Let's go back to the one-pi economy. So again, that's the example that I was starting with. And let's just see the sort of claim. Of course, it's a trivial claim, but I will just want to repeat on that without symbols, just to make sure that we understand the concept. So in this economy, there is unique equilibrium, and unique equilibrium is that the permissible is between 0 and 1 divided by n, and of course, everybody take 1 divided by n. That's the unique equilibrium. Let's see why this is equilibrium, because the logical structure here is typical to much more complicated situations. So first of all, this configuration is a para-equilibrium, because everybody take 1 divided by n, and that's feasible. Second, notice that there is no possibility, there is no para-equilibrium in which includes a point above 1 divided by n. Because if there is something above 1 divided by n, then everybody will take more than 1 divided by n, and that's not feasible. Therefore, this configuration is also a Y equilibrium, because you cannot expand the set further. But on the other hand, also, this is the unique Y equilibrium, because any para-equilibrium will be a subset, any Z, which will be a Y equilibrium, any other done actions that are compatible with the feasibility constraint will be a subset of this. And therefore, it will not be a Y equilibrium, and therefore the only Y equilibrium is the one which is written here. Not as surprising, but just again, you can see the logical structure that is needed to show what are the steps that are needed to show that something is unique Y equilibrium. Talking about one pi, I hope I don't make you too angry, so there are 2 pi's here. Michael and me, we call it the kosher economy. Let me just explain that Orthodox Jews don't eat together milk and meat. dairy and meat. They also don't put this one near the other, but let's put it aside. But of course, you don't have to go to Jewish traditions to understand this example. Think about it, that one pie is being in Prague, eating in Prague, and one pie is eating in Vienna, and you cannot be tonight in the same place, in the two places together. So you have to choose between taking the train to Prague or taking the train to Vienna. So the bundle here in traditional economics, the bundle here will be how much pie I eat from here and how much I eat from here. But you cannot eat both. You have to eat either from here or from here. In this respect, it's not the standard model that you are familiar with. So you have to choose either A0 or 0B. So every agents have some continuous, strictly monotonic preference on X, but some like more the pi 1, some more pi 2. Is it clear? Feasibility constraint. The sum of what people take from this pi is not more than 1. The sum of what people take from this pi is not more than 1. Now, what will be the structure here of equilibrium? Of course, again, because of the monotonicity, what is important is only the cap. What is the maximum that you can take from here, and what is the maximum that you can take from here? Of course, 1 divided by n of it and 1 divided by n of it typically will not be equilibrium because then some people will take this, some people will take this. And you can expand the permissible to more than that. But here comes something which at least we found interesting, which is the following. This economy also has a unique equilibrium, a Y equilibrium. And unique Y, you don't read it, just look at this picture. And unique Y equilibrium typically will be something like that. And let me talk about what is special here. Number one, there is always a unique Y equilibrium. Number two, the equilibrium will be such that one of the pies is fully consumed. It's impossible that the two pies will not be fully consumed. The proof is not completely trivial. It exists in the book or in the paper, but it's not difficult, of course. But it's not just, you cannot just increase a little bit here and here, because you have to be careful that if you increase a little bit here and here, then people will jump to consume too much one of the two. But in any case, one of the pies are always fully consumed. On the other end, the other one, not necessarily. Namely, there is a possibility that you will have structure like that. And what is the structure like that, special, is that there is something left over here. And the leftover is relatively small. What does it mean, small? Small is that this cannot be more than the portion that is allowed to be consumed from the gray pie. Let me explain why. You know, if everybody here prefer the 20 green to 30 gray, then this is not equilibrium, because now you can expand the gray to a little bit more, 31 let's say, and things are still fine. Still people will prefer, still the green will remain here, and you give a little bit more to the gray, and that's fine. The problem is that it may be that one guy here is indifferent between 20 green and 30 gray. If you increase a little bit the gray, then he will jump also to the left, and then this will be too much demand on the left. If that's not the case, yeah, right. Now, why this leftover cannot be too large? Because if it's too large, it's more than 30, then indeed you can move one of the guys here to the left. And then, again, this is not equilibrium because they progress. So the conclusion here is that you don't have full efficiency, but you have some sort of almost efficiency in the sense that the leftover exists, but it's relatively small. And this is an example of a model where you get uniqueness, and which, you know, as economists, we love uniqueness because we think about it as a unique end of the story in my approach, or unique prediction by other people's approach. But in any case, uniqueness is a good thing. Again, don't read it, it's for me. Much of economics is about what we call Euclidean economy. Euclidean economy is where the set X is not just a set, but the set X is some subset of some Euclidean space. Properties are not very important here, closed, convex, Euclidean space. Preferences, again, in this case, like in most of economics, we assume the standard assumptions that they are continuous and convex. And the feasibility constraint is also has some properties. In most of the book, we take the feasibility to be anonymous, namely, it's not personal, but if something is feasible, then any permutation of it is feasible as well. Forget now from the differentiability, and now let me say that in this case, namely, these are more or less the assumption that almost all the models in economics are assuming that under this assumption, then the existence is not a problem. I will not prove it here, but existence is not a problem, namely any Euclidean economy has at least one Y equilibria. Equilibrium usually very often more than one. However, again, just to demonstrate the ideas that we play with, in this case, we are going to put additional assumption about the set Y, the set of the permissible set. And let me explain why. Look at this picture. You've seen many like that. Maximum 70, minimum 45. Anybody laugh? Nobody laugh, right? Now you laugh, but before you did not. It looks fine. So what is going on here? The permissible set is to drive between 45 and 70. Okay? No complaints. How about that? You are allowed to drive between 10 and 25 and between 40 and 70. I see smiles. You laugh. It doesn't strike you as something natural. What's the difference between this and this? Mathematically, this is a convex set. This is not a convex set. Now, we would like to claim that when we think about permissible, the done things, and if we have some sort of algebra or some notion of betweenness, that's what is important, then if this is allowed and this is allowed, then something between is allowed. What is forbidden is usually the extreme behaviors, right? The extreme, whatever, and the extreme are not allowed. But if this is allowed, this is allowed, anything between is allowed. So here it is convex, here it's not convex. We are going to assume that the set of the permissible set, if we talk about, of course, if we, in the previous examples, some of the examples, it was discrete, so the housing example, there is no between. But in the examples, the Euclidean, we can talk about it. We are going to assume that what is allowed is convex set. And this is, again, that's supposed to capture two intuitions. Number one is the intuition about what is not allowed is in the extreme. And number two is also a notion of simplicity. I will not expand on that here. Let me just say that I think that when we talk about norms of behavior, then we have to think also about some simplicity, and norms should be simple to understand, to grasp, to learn, to educate, whatever. And convexity is a notion, also a notion. It's not only, but it's in some sense a notion of convexity, simplicity. This is more complicated to understand than to understand that you can drive between 45 and 70. Now, this is a real picture. And what's about this? Is it a fake? No fake in this lecture. This is also true. I mean, this is a picture which I found 2-3 years ago after a long, I don't know how I did find it. That's actually a picture from Estonia. That's Estonia. This is an ice road in the winter. And don't ask me if there is any physics person you can explain why that's the case, that it's between 25 and 40. It's not a good idea to drive on ice in this speed. So there are, if you want exception, there is exception. But You got the point. So what we do is actually when we talk about Euclidean economies, then we change the definition, and instead of talking about just a set Y, we require that the set is convex set. Now, I have another 10 minutes, 15 minutes? Okay, so of course I will not do more than 1/3 of what I planned, but that's fine. So let's go through this example because that's a key to understand also the differences between our approach and game theory. This is the example of a majority voting economy. Let me explain what it is. There are some guys here. In this example, 7 guys. These guys, there is some -1, think about them as some political positions. This is the far left, this is the far right. This guy is the leftist from the group. His ideal position is here. She is the median woman, and she is in the middle. And so this is her ideal point. Preferences in this case, we assume that what are called single peaked, namely there is a peak and it's going down to the right and to the left. That's basically what is called continuous and strict convex preferences. Okay, now this economy, the feasibility constraint, everybody can express his position, or he must actually express his position. The problem is that they must get to not to a consensus, but there must be a majority, namely at least n+1 divided by 2 guys. N is an odd number. So in this case, at least 4 guys have to agree on the same position. Why? Think about it, these are actually a panel of referees, judges, and there is a need that to get the procedure is such that there is a need that the majority agrees about something, whatever it is. It's not important what the minority say, but the majority must agree about something. It can be that, think about political example, that again, there is a need that the party will have some position and supported by a majority of the party, and minorities always exist and so on. Notice that some of you from political sciences or economics probably think about hoteling or some political models where this is also a political model, but it's not the standard one, because in the standard one, what is important for people is the outcome and not the positions they express. There are some models also in political sciences where actually what people care is both about the outcome and what is the positions that they express. In this case, we take a sort of extreme assumption that people care only about what they say. I don't care about what the department will decide, but I do care very much, professors are very good about that, we do care very much about what we say, right? And the rest, not important, right? So, is it clear? So the preferences are only about the positions that I express. Now, what will happen here according to our approach? According to our approach, I mean, if everybody will express his ideal position, collapse. There is no agreement. So there is some need to constraint, and the constraint here is about the done. So not all positions are going to be done. And our point is that here there are only 2 equilibria, and the 2 equilibria are 2 convex Y equilibria, and the equilibria are, this is the one, and of course the symmetric one to the left. What does it mean? It means you are allowed here to express position only from the median to the left. That's all. Right to the median is forbidden. If you don't like it, think about the symmetric example. Okay? So now what will happen here? First of all, this is a para-equilibrium, because these guys express their sincere opinion. These guys are not allowed. It's not done to express to the right of the median, so the best for them is to express the median, right? So there is a majority. Everybody from the median to the right agrees on the right. The leftists, they allowed to express their position. Of course, again, symmetry. So this is a para-equilibrium. Why it's cannot be expanded? It cannot be expanded because if now we allow also positions to the right of the median, by the way, this should be actually on this point exactly. If we allow now positions on the right to the median, then this will not be para-equilibrium, because then everybody from the median to the left will express his sincere opinion. The right-wingers will express the right edge of the permissible, and there is no majority. Only 3 of them at most will agree on the same position. So you cannot expand it. Why these are the only 2 equilibria? Because it's impossible that there will be a position allowed to the left of the median and to the right of the median. Because if there is a position to the right of the median, to the left of the position, because of the convexity, then the median point also is allowed. She will choose the median, and the guys on the right will choose a point to the right of the median, the guys of the left will choose a point on the left of the median, and there is no majority. So the only para-equilibrium must include points which are either from the median to the left or the median of the right, and therefore, again, because of the maximality, these are the only 2 equilibria. So the y-equilibrium in this example is quite sharp. Let's compare it with game theory. You can think about this situation also as a game. As a game, I mean, it's not completely trivial, but it's trivial, but there are some conceptual questions to answer, which is how to model it as a game. One suggestion will be the following. You can choose any point. That's the set. But your preferences are, first of all, you care about the existence of a majority. So if I'm going to break the majority, I don't like it. If I can move from my position to another position such that there will be a majority, that's better. So think about it that my preferences are the worst is that there is no. So in this case, I care not only about my action, I care about the configuration. The configuration determines whether there is a crisis or not, and then, given that there is no crisis, I prefer to express my sincere position. So, in this case, is it clear? So now I describe the game. A game, everybody chooses a point. I do care, I expanded now the preferences to take care, to take into consideration also the feasibility constraint. And I assume that people don't like that there will be a collapse of the party or lack of decision of the panel or whatever. If this is the case, then what are the Nash equilibria for this game? By the way, this is the traditional ways the situation like that would be analyzed. Then actually everything goes. Not almost everything, in the sense that take any position, assign any 4 agents to this position. It doesn't have to be the people who are closest to the point. It could be any 4, and assign them to express this position, and take the other 3 assigned to their peaks. That's a Nash equilibrium. So there are a lot of Nash equilibria here, and now I'm not saying that this is definitely. Not always it is a deficiency. Of course, it depends on the assessment of what is the quality of the concept that we talk about. But I bring this example, that's a simple example to demonstrate that the predictions of this model are prediction, quote unquote. I hate this word. So the outcome of this model or this solution concept is very, very far from the standard game theoretical concept of Nash equilibrium applied to a situation like that. Well, let's keep on that. Let me, since I have 2 minutes or 3 minutes, let me just tell you about, very briefly, about the 2 other concepts that we have in the main topics that we have in the book, and I will settle with that. Number 1, the second idea is what we call a status equilibrium. Status equilibrium is that in society there is some order which is determined by in equilibrium. It's not exogenous. There is some order of the alternative such that equilibrium is such a profile that the action that is assigned to you is the best from the actions which have the status of the actions that is assigned to you or lower. Namely, I choose to be in Tel Aviv. I can move from Tel Aviv, only there is a ladder somehow which is determined in the world, in the academic world of the universities, and I can move from Tel Aviv to a lower place, but I cannot move from Tel Aviv to Harvard. Okay? So equilibrium will be such a configuration which is supported also by a ranking of the status, such that my action is the best given that I cannot go upper than the status of the alternative that I determine. This equilibrium has also a dual interpretation that sometimes is better, which is actually in some sense the opposite. Namely, there is some ranking of the alternative in the society, and I can move from my action only to actions which are considered more important to the society than the one that I am assigned. Given that I can do it, I will move to whatever I prefer. But I'm not allowed, because of my conscience, because of some economic, social norm, to move from the actions that I am assigned to take to an action which is considered less valuable by the society. I must at least, if I move, it cannot be just because I like it, but also because actually I supported the social goal, something like that. So that's another suggestion, which is very far from the suggestion that I suggested before. Again, the something else in this case is a ranking or a ranking of the alternatives, which the last and the third example is what we call a biased equilibrium. Biased equilibrium, a biased preferences equilibrium, is that what determines the, probably let me just show you one thing, and let's, this is my co-author on this paper, so that's Asher Volinsky, and I took him, in the time that we worked, I took a picture of him. It's very dangerous to be my co-author. But actually the third idea is actually in some sense continuous of, or in the, in this fable that I'm sure you've seen once. Driven by an hunger, a fox tried to reach some grapes hanging high on the vine, but was unable to, although he leaped with all his strength. As he went away, the fox remarked, "Oh, you are not even ripe yet. I don't need any sour grapes." So what happened here is that the fox, so the possibilities here is to get the grapes or not to get the grapes. The feasibility is not to get the grapes, but he preferred to get the grapes. So what is happening here is the equilibrium changed his preferences. His preferences now, he could not get it, so he prefers not to have it over to have it. So this fable is in some sense the beginning or some motivation to the idea that sometimes in society what's happening is that we have preferences and the preferences are not compatible. And everybody wants to be in this office, everybody wants to do something, that everybody wants to be a chair, and only one person can be a chair, and so on. So what's happening in this case, according to this approach, there is a change in the preferences. Some people start to like to be a chair less and less and less, until only one person wants to be a chair, to a chair. It's probably an extreme example. But think about it, that there are some, for example, preferences about being selfish versus being altruistic. So we have all of us have some sort of trade-off between being selfish and being altruistic. And the needs of the society might actually somehow bias us in a way that will balance between these two needs until equilibrium will reach. That's the idea of the third. So to conclude, what I wanted to present here is some examples of something else that could be determined in equilibrium in a way that will bring harmony. It's, by the way, this is real again. It's not fake. I did not make it. The story here is that my mother-in-law, she died a few years ago, but she has some apartment in Tel Aviv. One day I came to visit her, and I saw this. By the way, it still exists. I don't understand who did it and why, but this is in some sense the message of the paper. I mean, but it's not normal provocation, but it is to provocate. Namely, I spend much of my life on game theory, but I don't think that it's not more than just a set of models, which are sometimes interesting, something very boring, but it's not the real world. It's not the real model. It's just a model. And what we wanted in this book is demonstrate, it's a very short book, by the way, is that demonstrate some examples of what we find interesting. Of course, we are probably the only people that find it interesting. Some models were economic models that with some ideas, other ideas about what determine equilibrium, not prices, and not through strategic reasoning. But in some sense, our models are closer in spirit, in my opinion, to competitive equilibrium than to game theory because of a complete lack of strategic reasoning. But on the other hand, we put inside not prices, but something else that bias our preferences or restrict what is done, or include also some other considerations like status or prestige that determine or affect at least our choices in a way that brings harmony. Questions, complaints?